Welcome to the Confidence in Singing podcast, where you can reclaim your voice and rediscover the joy of singing. I'm Aideen, and my guests include singers and voice experts who share their insights and journey to encourage singing for health, happiness, and fun. To support this podcast and join the Confidence in Singing community, just click on the Patreon link below. New patrons will be entered into my launch competition for a 1-hour voice coaching session. Patrons also get bonus content and access to special offers. Thank you. Welcome everybody to our podcast today. This is Aideen from Confidence in Singing, and my guest is Cianan Curran. You're very, very welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Aideen. Thanks for having me.
Cianan is an Irish artist and singer whose style is emotive, raw, and grounded in traditional Irish folk music. In the last 2 years, his music has reached more than 1 million people and has helped raise funding for the Hopi and Navajo tribes. His music is an anchor that keeps him centered and was born from a need to express emotions more so than a want to perform. Tell us a little bit firstly about the Navajo and the Hopi tribes. How did you end up raising money for them? What happened there?
Yeah, so I'd come back to Ireland for lockdown, basically, and it was the summertime. It was last summer, and I was in the forest in the fields near my family home, and I was just cleaning up some sheets of galvanise that were on the grass. And as I was cleaning the galvanise, I heard the voices of what I would consider to be my ancestors. And they said to me, you need to make a video acknowledging the relationship between the Irish people and the Choctaw people. You need to make a video acknowledging the Irish people who've never forgotten the Choctaw donation. And you need to support the donations that the Irish people are currently giving to the Navajo and the Hopi. So a bit more backstory on that. A lot of people are aware.
Yeah.
A lot of people are aware that the Choctaw tribe in America donated money to the Irish during the famine times. And there was a massive gesture from the Choctaw people. And Irish people have never forgotten that. There's many people on this island who have held that gesture and kept it alive. And the Navajo people and the Hopi tribes, they were very much hit hard by COVID-19. And there was a massive outpour of support from Ireland to a GoFundMe. And the Navajo and the Hopi were unaware of this relationship and this reverence that the Irish had for the native tribes of America. So I felt like that was something that I had to do. So I said, okay, I'm going to honour this. And I was spending a lot of time on the land. I was camping out a lot and just, spending time to myself. We recorded the video and I uploaded it to Facebook. And it got a lot of traction. From me, it got a lot of traction. It felt like a lot happened, and we had Navajo people, Hopi, we had Choctaw and Irish all commenting on the video. And that's when the Attorney General of the Navajo Nation got in touch with me and was like, look, this has really kicked off on the reservations. A lot of the natives are watching this video and are very, very grateful for what you've done. And it felt like it was huge for me, and hundreds of messages came in from Irish people, Navajo people, Choctaw, Cherokee, Cree, Apache. They were all just really championing the essence of it, and it became a place where there was cross-pollination of the cultures, and it was a very special moment for me and for my family, and I was immensely grateful for what came off the back of it. So they'd said that, when everything lifts and things settle down, that they'll have me over on the reservations, and we'll break bread and get to know each other a little better. It was an amazing an amazing thing to happen, and it's something I'll hold close to my heart for the rest of my life.
I love that. I love it. And one thing I thought was interesting was that the moment when you got the idea, because I think when we get these little nudges, you know, like you said, you felt that the nudge was from your ancestors. Sometimes we might know where the idea pops in sometimes into our minds, and we know it's not our own thought. Would you like tell us a little bit more about that moment and how you knew that you could trust that, how you knew that that was important?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You know, that is a great point. I feel like, you know, not everybody feels or believes like that's possible for your ancestors or for anything outside of your physical domain to be able to communicate with you or contact with you. And I understand that. I totally understand that. If someone doesn't think that that's possible, you know, I respect that. In the experiences I've had, in the life that I've lived, I feel like there's been times when I have felt something reaching out to me or something showing me things. And over the course of time, I feel like I've learned to respect that and honour it and acknowledge it. And I've been blessed in a sense that I've been able to travel in a way where I was looking for answers and I was looking for experiences and I was looking for challenges. And I feel like I've been to the Himalayas many times to study meditation and to spend time with sadhus and gurus and the Vedantic philosophies, and I learned a lot from that. Going to the Amazon, been to the Amazon and studied with the shamans there, taking plant medicines and exploring the indigenous cultures, in particular of Bolivia. And that also consolidated a lot for me as an Irish person, as an Irish man. And when I come home to Ireland, I feel a lot of magic on the island. I feel a lot of love and I feel a lot of history. And when I came home in the last year in particular, I felt a deep connection with my surrounding and also with my ancestors. And that was a very clear communication. And I just said, look, I'm going to honour it. And even now, for me to speak about it, you know, that's the decision I had to make. I was like, okay, do I talk about this from a truly personal perspective? Am I going to be vulnerable in this? Am I going to invite people in to where my creativity can come from sometimes? And, you know, that is what happened. That was my experience of it. So for people, I feel like if you are being given a gift from whatever you feel that gift is coming from, it's from the universe, if it's from nature, if it's from your ancestors or whatever you feel it's where it's coming from, you've nothing to lose by honouring that and going for it. You know, failure is not as damaging or it's not as hurtful as you think. You know, you can make failure a lot more than what it is. So if I'd have made the video and if it didn't do anything, you know, what would I have had to lose from that? If I speak now and say, look, I feel my ancestors told me to make that video, and the energy that came off that video and what it did for people and what it's done for me, you know, that was a positive thing. So that's what I feel about that moment. And if other people don't feel that's what the moment was, I'm more than happy for you to think and feel that. You know, I respect that. You've the right to feel that.
Absolutely. I think that what you said there is so interesting. You had to make a decision where you're going to allow yourself to be vulnerable in telling your experience, because everybody experiences things like that differently. And you know, sometimes we get an intuition and we just go for it. I think that's the most important thing, is that you trust yourself, trust that what's coming in, and whether you think it's coming from your ancestors or you think it's coming from your higher self or you think it's coming from your own brain. But we get those little nudges, and I feel like that's where people start doing something different, and they get given something to do that seems a little risky. But there is not a huge downside. Do you know, like that you said, sometimes 100%. We overestimate how the downside. So I'm just so it's just it makes me feel really, I don't know, inspired to talk to you about this, because I feel like musicians and singers do have a connection. They're a little bit more sensitive sometimes, and they have to trust themselves, and they're taking that risk to be vulnerable all the time by putting out a song. And for a lot of the people that I work with and my listeners, they may not sing much at all yet. What would you say to people to, that if they want to try, kind of find the confidence to start expressing themselves for the first time in that way? What would you say to them?
That's interesting, and that's also something that I can relate to. I feel like for me, music has always been like a survival mechanism, singing in particular. I feel like when I was younger, there was a lot of emotions that you kind of can't identify or articulate. And when I would hear a certain song, it would resonate with me. And I'd think, okay, this song is hitting something in me. I'd try and learn the song with the guitar and singing it. And as I was singing it, it would be a way for me to vent the emotion that the song was evoking. And it became a tool for expression. And it was a vital part of me clearing debris from my emotional body. Now, I used to find it very hard and very intense singing in front of people, because I would be at home, I'd sit on the end of my bed, I'd close my eyes, and I'd go into that pocket of emotion, wherever it was in me, and I'd sing from that space. And I would really honestly feel like I was tapping into pockets of energy hidden in my own body and just exuding that. So then when you're asked to sing in front of people, you're like, oh, what do I do here? Like, am I going to open my eyes? Am I going to give a little dance or a jig? Or, what do you do? Like, and I used to find it very tough, because it was such a vulnerable personal thing. And I thought, what, for ages, I was like, right, I'm not going to try and perform this song. I'm literally going to close my eyes here and just pretend I'm at the end of my bed, or I'm sitting on my floor in my room. Mm-hmm. So I'd often, early doors, I'd sing, keep my eyes closed, I'd open my eyes, and I'd immediately leave the room. I'd go to the toilet or whatever, because I couldn't handle that thing of opening your eyes and people clapping and looking at you, and you're like, the awkwardness for the 30 seconds afterwards where nobody really knows what to do because you've just sang a song. Like, and I was very uncomfortable in that. So I'd leave the room, go to the toilet, maybe have a little drink in the kitchen if we were at a house party or whatever, and then when things kind of settle down, slowly work my way back into the room. So maybe talk to the first person you meet at the door on the way into the room and ease your way back in, because you've just opened up, you've just showed people something that is so personal. And that is hard. There is no other way of looking at that. That can be tough, especially if you're truly committed to, singing. If you're singing from a place of expression, you're really, really expressing yourself when you're singing. That is not something that general conversation allows you to do. So, that can be difficult. What I would say, it goes back to failure. It goes back to that failure thing. If you're a singer, or you love singing, or even if you like singing and you just want to be able to sing a song in front of people, just do it. And even if you get through to the first verse and you draw a blank, and you forget the chorus and this, that, and the other, like, who cares? Who cares? If you get up there and you're feeling a bit quivery and your first 2 or 3 lines of the song are a bit choky or croaky, or, do you know what I mean? Who cares? Like, you can't be putting yourself under that pressure. This is ultimately, we're playing music. Playing is the key there. This is playtime. This is fun. This is inner child in its totality. And we have to allow ourselves the freedom to fail, and we have to allow ourselves the freedom to not be perfect. And it can be an intense experience expressing yourself in a group of people, And that's okay. It's okay to feel like that's intense. It's okay to feel like it's okay to be nervous. If you're not nervous, it's not really worth doing, I feel. I always said anyway, if it's not nervous, it's not worth doing. If you're not nervous,
Yeah.
it's not worth doing. So
That's
all
really
I'd
great
say.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, to me, but when I work with people that are new singers or beginners, and when we work on a song, I always emphasize that a song is a way of communicating and expressing something. And when we bring our true emotion to a song, the quality of the singing becomes secondary to what people feel when they hear the song. And there's plenty of singers and very well-known singers that their voices wouldn't be considered very good, but they are considered like bards almost, you know what I mean? That they have that ability to touch people with their music. And I think that's a nice access point to singing for someone who doesn't usually sing, because everybody has the capability of bringing their heart to the song. It takes a while to learn to sing really well. If you haven't been singing for, years, or if you never sang before, it can take a while to even learn how to pitch and get the notes right. But if you can bring the feeling to it, so much of that is completely forgiven.
100%. Commitment is key. If you commit, truly commit, then a lot changes. And also another thing I would say to somebody or anybody who likes to sing and wants to sing in front of people, if you know the lyrics of a song, it makes a big difference. And there's two types of knowing the lyrics, I feel. If you stand up on stage or in a group of people and you take the lyrics out on a phone and stuff, you're mentally engaged because you're reading and singing at the same time. So there isn't going to be that sense of oneness with the song, because you're split in two. You're reading and you're singing. If you know the lyrics to the point where you don't have to close your eyes, but that's just, yourself. If you're at the point where you know the song well enough to just be able to sing it, so you don't have to read it, but you're trying to remember it. That's one stage. That's one thing, and that does help. If you get to the point where you know the song, where your mind isn't in any way engaged in the lyrics or remembering the lyrics, your mind isn't involved in trying to, direct your lungs, your breathing, your throat, your mouth. You're not trying to focus on your body as an instrument. You've gotten past that. Your body knows what to do. Your mind knows what to do. So they're just in autopilot. Then that's when you have the time and the space to go into yourself and find the emotion and the inspiration for the delivery. When that comes into one clean space and you've committed wholeheartedly to opening yourself to that delivery, people feel that you can bring people to that place with you. They hear it in your tone, they hear it in your they feel it off you. And you don't have to be technically incredible. You don't have to be, classically trained. You don't have to be perfect. But if you can move people with that voice, that's massive. That's not only healing for you, but it's healing for the people around you. And it is healing.
100%. I really love that. The song has every song has depths that sometimes even the recording of the most popular recording of a song sometimes doesn't even reveal the full depths of a song. I've had experiences where a student has sung a song that I know from the radio, and the student made me feel something much deeper than the radio version. Because especially when you're in the room with someone, and I think this is where I think there's so much value to singing for friends. And a lot of people who listen to music a lot on the radio, or, you know, they listen to really high quality, well recorded music, sometimes they discount the value of the raw, you know, the raw song, just with friends, with almost a few mistakes on the guitar, and maybe getting a little choked up halfway through. All those things are so raw and real, and they can be very profound moments of acknowledging something, acknowledging an emotion, acknowledging pain that some people are going through, and connecting with the listener and connecting with the singer about something that matters.
100%. The element of humanity in music is vital. That's why sometimes I find, like my little sister Sinead, she's 21, and she has a great taste in music. She actually has a phenomenal taste in music. Sometimes she'll play me songs that are of trend, they're current, and drum tracks, low resolution, cheap drum tracks, hit me like a ton of bricks, because the humanity, the pace, the resonance of a drum kit played by someone who's really in it is so unbelievably far ahead than a low res click track. And I just, it's like the voices can be like that too, you know. If you have the equivalent of a voice that's in a click track, and it's, you know, heavily mastered and maybe a little bit of auto tune, and sometimes that really works. I've no problem with that. But sometimes you're like, that's you've stripped away anything worth holding on to there. And then sometimes you're flicking through videos on your phone and you see a random clip of like a 14-year-old boy singing a song at a funeral or something, and you know, you can hear the wind on your man's phone, and it's just so, like, you know, it is what it is. But the whole experience of looking at that phone video, you're like, Jesus, this is unbelievable. And then you listen to something that's majorly produced by an artist in a studio somewhere in Los Angeles, and, you know, it sounds like a Bop It or a Tamagotchi, or, you know what I mean, an old Casio watch just beeping at you. You're like, Jesus, all to it, like, you know?
Absolutely, I know. It's tell me a little bit, Cianan, about your kind of that journey, that spiritual journey you've been on, because I know you were talked about earlier that you've gone to different places and you've kind of connected with, you were able to trust that the ancestors were talking to you because of a journey you've been on, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so in my bloodlines, in my mother and father's lines, there was herbalists and healers, and you know, people did blessings, and that's common in Ireland. You know, that is very common in Ireland. We have, in the Celtic cultures, which, you know, us in Scandinavia and Scotland and, you know, parts of northern Spain and stuff, like, there's Celtic people in the in Ireland in particular. So we do have a culture of wishing wells and, you know, blessings, and there's a lot of magic in the country. And I grew up in a family that worked in that way, and as a result of that, I feel like we were always open to exploring belief systems. Do you know, like, your belief system for us was always something very personal. You know, it was never like, oh, this is what life is, this is why we live, this is how we live, you know, this is your religion. And it wasn't like that. You were allowed to formulate your own beliefs, and the idea was that your belief system should be dynamic. Like, if you believe something at the age of 14 and still believe that by the age of 44, you know, you haven't really been challenged, or you have an unbelievably tight belief system and it has been challenged and you just smashed it as a 14-year-old, which is possible too. Yeah. So in Ireland, growing up in Catholicism, and you know, you singing a mass and playing the tin whistle and the usual crack, fairly tame, but you gave it socks at the time because you're 8, like. And then the opportunity came to go to India at 16. So I went over to India at 16, and I spent time with meditation teachers there, went to the Himalayas and went to the River Ganges, and you know, you're in a completely different world, and you're this wild little testosterone fueled thick country 16-year-old lad, like, you know, there was no other way of looking at it. That's exactly what I was. But I loved the variety of Indian culture, spending time with the Muslims and the Hindus and the Sikhs, and really spending time with them, like going to the mosques and the gurudwaras and the temples, and, you know, really seeing how other people expressed their faith. And it was, I remember one time in particular, we were with a sadhu, and a sadhu was like almost like a monk, but they're more rogue, and they have an individual way of doing things. The Hindus have a lot of freedom in their belief system, which is interesting. I found that interesting. There's a lot of, you can, as a Hindu, you can connect with your God pretty much any way you choose, and there's so many gods. So there's no concept of ownership over this deity's better than that deity and everything like that. Now, for me as a 16-year-old, I'm looking at these deities. Some of the Hindu gods are blue and orange, and they've 20 legs and 40 arms, and they're standing on the back of a rhino and all. And you're just thinking, so hard to relate to that, because you've been looking at Jesus there on the cross, and he looks like your Uncle James, and you're thinking, yeah, I get it, like, you know. So that was just the imagery I was surrounded by. So I never attached to Hinduism, but I enjoyed the way they went about doing things. So we were with this sadhu anyway, and he you know, he'd jet black skin and, you know, matted black and grey hair, and he just had the most powerful face, and he wore nothing but a little cloth around his body, and he didn't speak, and it was just such an amazing experience to be around him, and the feeling I got from him was huge. I was about 18, 19 at the time. Then I came back to Ireland. And I met up with an old friend, and we were walking together, and he was chatting, and he said, will we go see me granny? We pop in to see me granny. And I was like, yeah, I'm game for that. So we walked into the kitchen, and the granny was asleep on a little stool beside the stove. And I could see she had her, you know, little apron on, and proper Irish granny. Like, she was about 4'2", like, she was tiny. And she had the rosary beads in her hand, and the radio was playing, and the doors were wide open, and she jumps up and she was like, oh, would you like a cup of tea? And I was like, yeah, I'll game for a cup of tea, right? And she handed me the cup of tea, and when she gave me that cup of tea, I realised I felt the same love and the same power and connection from her as I did from the sadhu in India.
Wow.
And that was a huge moment for me, because I realised that the magic that I had encountered in India was also in Ireland. And if it wasn't for me going to the Himalayas to encounter that, because in the Himalayas you're so out of your comfort zone. There's no jambons, there's no twirls, there's no tea. The milk is, you know, it's hard to call it milk even compared to what we have here. There's no toilet roll, there's no toilets even, do you know?
Yeah.
You're sweating, everything is spicy, you know, there's horns beeping at you all the time. There's no comfort zones. So you get there, you feel that, you come home, and you're used to seeing it and feeling it. You've identified that energy. And next thing, you're in the granny's kitchen, and it hits you like a ton of bricks that it's there too. So that for me is a homecoming. It was a homecoming. Then when I said, look, I want to go to the Amazon, and I want to take the plant medicines, and I want to learn from the indigenous people of South America, and I want to go over there as an Irish man, and I want to honour my ancestors. I want to represent the Currans and the Balfs and the Maloneys and the McGanns. I want to represent them humbly, and I want to acknowledge these indigenous people, and I want to learn from them. And when I got to South America and saw the indigenous Bolivians, the Cholitas, as they called them, they're like Clada women. They looked like women from the west of Ireland in the early 1900s. Couldn't believe it. Like, there was old ladies I know in the time And if I'd have picked them up and dropped them in the middle of Bolivia, it would have been, you wouldn't have put them out of place. Like, I couldn't believe the cheekbones, the size of them. I was like, you look Irish. You actually look Irish. And then I come back to Ireland and I look at some of the older people here and I think, you look like an indigenous Bolivian.
Wow.
I was like, what's going on? What's the similarities sometimes is unreal. So I feel like that, you know, the spiritual journey is something you could call it. But I feel for myself, the word spiritual, it feels like, you know, it's been hijacked in certain senses, and it's hard to define spirituality in a way that means anything anymore, because it's spirituality and the word means so many things to so many different people now. But all I can say is that my traveling has always been motivated by personal growth, and everything I learnt from the cultures that I encountered. When I came home to Ireland, it just made me appreciate Ireland all the more, and it made me feel more fulfilled with being on this island and engaging in the people and enjoying with the people there, you know. So it's made me feel much more empowered as an Irish person, and it's made me feel more proud of my people, and it's made me feel I don't know, it's humbled me, that's for sure.
It sounds like you did find a part of yourself, like you deepened your understanding of who you are and how you connect with your environment in Ireland by going somewhere that was so out of your comfort zone. I was wondering, has that affected your singing and your creativity in any way?
Absolutely. When I was a young lad, I can't read music, by the way. I'm not classically trained when it comes to music. I haven't done any guitar grades, haven't done any singing grades, haven't done anything like that. So when I was starting to learn songs when I was younger in Ireland, you'd be singing them at the odd house party, trying to get the old show going, you know, a few pints and you're there. And you'd be singing them in an English accent or an American accent. Now, I didn't realise that's what I was doing, because I was just trying to mimic the sounds of what I was hearing. Then I was in London, I was in Soho Square, and I was sat on one of the little monuments in Soho Square, and I was singing songs, and this lady comes up to me, and she was like, oh, would you like to come over and drink with us in the grass? And I was like, yeah, I'm up for a few cans, like. And she's like, oh, you're Irish? And I said, yeah, I'm Irish, yeah. And she said, why aren't you singing in your Irish accent? She said, I love the Irish accent. And I thought to myself, I was like, sure, I am singing in my Irish accent. Like, what are you talking about? And then I went home and you're singing and you're like, Jesus, Cianan, you're not singing in your accent at all. You're not. You're actually, you've been mimicking the sounds of the Americans and the Brits. So it's changed your vowel sounds. It's changed your consonant sounds. It's changed your tone is not Irish. So that for me, that was a big check. So I thought, okay, do you know what? I'm going to try and sit a little deeper into my accent when I'm singing. And when I did that, that's when I felt a completely different power in my voice and the resonance of my voice when I was singing. And that was a huge change. Also, when I went to the UK and lived in London and was playing and singing in London, you know, you are the Irish lad. Do you know what I mean? And I've like, anyone who knows me, I've long hair, I've a beard, and I've quite a large head. I have a massive head, right? I have the head like a bull. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I just have to accept that. You know, my head's the size of a basketball. And when you're in these trendy pubs and cafes in London, and you're with the people playing music, and they're very well dressed, and they're kind of chic, and they're very metro, and they can all harmonise, and they're French, and they're vegan, and they're nice and thin and lovely and tanned and everything. And I'm stood in the middle of them then, just looking like Pumba. Do you know what I mean? Like, I even stand out like a sore thumb. So They were always like, oh, you're the folk guy, you're the Irish guy. And that's not something that I wouldn't have put myself in that category when you're at home. When you're at home in Ireland, you're just another chap that can sing a few songs. You're not considered anything other than that. But then when you're thrown into the mix of this kind of continental group of musicians, it nearly accentuates how unique the Irish tone and the Irish essence of music can be, how impactful it can be. So in particular, my time in the UK, that really did help me dial in how my foundation in Ireland has how that shines through in my music. That's definitely been polished because of the time I spent in London.
It's really interesting, and I had a really interesting conversation with Edel Mead, who studied jazz music with me. We kind of were in college together, and she's had a turning point for her own singing, where she's starting to sing in an Irish traditional way, and she's leaving some of the jazz music behind, because she started to realise that she wasn't being authentic. It wasn't truly her. And she had something actually very different to say in terms of the lyrics that she wanted to write. And she didn't want to just be singing about, feeling so young and like bouncing around and catching the moon with a string and, all the fun lyrics of the jazz tradition that were really written to cheer people up during the Depression in the USA. So her new album is all about, you'll have to listen to it, Cianan, you'll really enjoy it. It's about women in Ireland and really raw issues that women have dealt with. And one of our songs is about Oliver Cromwell, and like one of the songs is about Bridget Cleary, who was killed by her husband in Clonmel, which is where Edel is from. But I really love that that's been the journey where you are finding who you are by being around people who are not like you. And I think in Ireland there's a lot of people that really value travel as a way to learn, but that isn't always the case, and sometimes I feel like people need to travel more. But it sounds like it made a big difference to you.
Yeah, it was massive. It was absolutely massive. I definitely feel like a nomad. I feel nomadic. I feel like, I'm in a situation or a space for a certain length of time, and I get this unbelievable graw to just go somewhere and be challenged. And I actually love people. I love people in two ways. I love people because I think they're so interesting. People are so interesting, and to hear people's stories or their thoughts and opinions, I think that's fascinating. I love pulling stories from people by asking them the right questions. If you ask anybody well-formulated, open questions, they'll tell you a story. You can pull it from them. And people work. Everyone has a field of work, or they have hobbies and interests. Everybody is a wealth of knowledge in some way. The second way I love people is physically. I think we're actually a very beautiful animal. Like, there's people out there that love bird watching. There's people out there that love going on safaris and looking at the wild African animals, and people love Irish native species and stuff like that. And I'm all for that. I actually think human beings are incredibly beautiful as animals, as entities. And so we all love people watching. A lot of people love people watching. And I love people watching on a really just deep level. And I love going to foreign countries where people have completely different genetics, completely different cultures, and absorbing them as people, going to their communities and being a witness, And then I love, here in Ireland as well, I love seeing people from different countries in Ireland. And what's gas is when you're in London, if you meet foreign people in London, you can really see that they're like from their country and a little bit London. And then when you come back and walk through Dublin, let's say, and you see foreign people in Dublin, you're like, I see how Irish you actually are. Because if we were in London now, you wouldn't be anything like you are now. So you can really see the Irish rubbing off on foreign people when they come to Ireland as well. And I love to see that. So
that's really good.
Yeah. I love people. Absolutely love them.
Yeah, when you have someone who's Polish with them, they have an Irish turn of phrase. It's always so fun. Well, we're getting towards the end of our time, but I did want to let people know a little bit about your Aslan chronicles, and would you fill us in quickly about that? And we'll be finishing up with the song of yours as well, which I'm really looking forward to sharing with everyone. But could you tell us a little bit about Aslan first?
Yeah, 100%. So this is something I actually wanted to say as well, right? Over the course of this lockdown, there has been times when I have not been playing music. There have been times when I have not felt it in me to sit down and play the guitar and sing. And that's happened to me in periods over my life. You know, there could be 2 months there you don't pick it up at all. There could be 3 months, there could be 6 months. And there was times, if just say I haven't sang in 6 months, about 4 months into that 6 months, I'd be getting a bit worried, like, am I losing my love for music here? You might get into a bit of a panic. But then it always comes back. And what I've began to realise over the years is that my energy swells and contracts and swells and contracts. And when it's in that point when it's contracted, I am kind of growing as a person. And then when I come into the next swell, as an artist, I feel like I've actually matured. So I've had more patience with that process. So over the course of the lockdown, I felt like my music kind of contracted a little bit. And my creativity was still open and flowing. It just wasn't in when it came to the music, right? So we have a little patch of ground here in the home, and I wanted a couple of goats to keep the grass down in an area that we have there, right? So I was thinking very practical. And I contacted a family friend and I said, you know, I'm looking for a couple of goats. Can you try and pick me up a few to get me going? You can actually probably hear the goats now. Can you hear that?
Is that the goats?
That's a goat, yeah. There's a goat.
I thought it was like a power drill or something like that in the background.
No, the two boys actually sit outside the door of my office now. So on the porch, as I open the door, the two goats are literally sat there just waiting for me to go out and give them a rub or whatever.
That's hilarious that they started chatting to us as soon as you started chatting about them.
I know, yeah, they're unbelievable. So I contacted the friend and I said, look, can you get me a goat? And they said, get me a couple of goats. And they said, yeah, no worries. And I heard nothing for about 4 months. And then one day I was in Newbridge, which is a town that's maybe 20 minutes from here. And my sister texted me and she said, Cianan, there's a goat in the garden. And I was like, oh my God, I actually have a goat. This is mental. And then when I came back to the house and looked into the garden, it was a very young pygmy goat. And pygmy goats, when they're small, are tiny, tiny animals. And I looked at this goat and I was like, oh Jesus, I'm going to have to properly look after this thing. Like, this isn't the goat I was expecting. I was expecting a mature, hardy animal that I'd, like, you know, basically just have to facilitate its lifestyle. I did not think I'd be handed basically a baby and be like, you know, you're going to have to raise this thing from scratch. And I was like, so we called that goat Aslan. And I was looking at him and I was like spending time with him. And I was like, this goat's incredible. Like, this is a special animal here. Like, I feel me and this goat are going to have some serious adventures together. And I took out my phone one day and I made a short video about Aslan in my office, because he used to come into the office and we'd just chill together, you know. And I posted that, and I was in lockdown and I was doing nothing else, and I just thought this creative energy was in me to just document my journey with this goat that I could always have to look back on. And I made 2, I made 3, I made 4, I made 5, and I just kept adding to what I wanted Aslan's experience to be like, because goats are incredible animals. They're nimble, they're dynamic, they're fast, they're smart, they're just beautiful to watch. So I was constantly trying to push the boundaries of his experience. I didn't want Aslan to just be in the back garden and for 20 years never see anything outside of this house. I was like, I'm going to bring this goat to the top of the highest mountain in Ireland. I was like, I'm going to bring this goat like down the River Shannon. I want this goat to be hanging out the back window of my car. I want this goat to experience as much life as possible. And then I got Geronimo, who was a companion for Aslan. So Aslan and Geronimo, those two became brothers immediately. And they just like, they ruled the roost here at home. And then that's when the two kids arrived, Satanta and Darby. So I went from having like no goats to having 4 goats in like, honestly, the space of about 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Wow.
And then I started to make just videos. I made the videos about my journey with the goats and about the goats in general, because I was fascinated with them. And
that's fantastic. I wanted you to let people, because we're finishing up now, unfortunately, where our time is getting short. How do people find those videos, and how would you like them to start to follow you in terms of your music as well?
Yeah, so in terms of the Aslan's Adventures, which is what I call the little videos that we've been making, they're on my Facebook page and my Instagram page. Primarily my Instagram if you're looking for the Aslan content. So Cianan Curran on Instagram, Cianan Curran on YouTube, and Cianan Curran on Facebook. I've kept it all. Thankfully, the blessing of having a name like Cianan, you know, it's pretty much yours whenever you want it. So if you're looking for music as well, same thing, Cianan Curran on Facebook. And I've some stuff on Spotify, but I've more to go up on Spotify. So any of those platforms, to be honest, you're going to find stuff. But if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll just keep it lit. I'd appreciate that. That would be great.
Oh, absolutely. I think after the chat we've had, you're going to have a lot of very interested new followers, and I'm excited to see what happens next with the goats and with your music. So we're going to play one of your songs to finish up. The song is called Gold, Silver and Bronze. Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about it? Or is there anything else that you feel you want to say before we finish up?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me on and taking this time out, and I really appreciate you know, getting in touch and acknowledging this, and honest to God, I really do appreciate that. In terms of this song I wrote, it's a true story, believe it or believe it not. This song is a true story, and there's a part of this was after a breakup. I'd moved to London. I was shook.com, as you can imagine, as we often are after breakups, unless it was a horrific relationship, but this one wasn't. But anyway, I was sat there out at the window of my apartment, and there was a full moon, and I was looking up at the full moon, and I was at that point where I was a bit shell-shocked, and you know, I knew I had emotion that I needed to release, but it wasn't coming, so I felt a bit blocked, and I was looking up at the full moon, and I started howling like a wolf. I just felt an overwhelming urge to just howl at the moon. And that became a fundamental part of this song that you're about to hear. And I had the Boweron with me, so I just picked the Boweron up and put it onto my lap. And I'd say the song was written in about like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It was just one of those things that just came up and came out. And thankfully, I was able to write it down and record it. And it was the first song that I'd released on video, and it's one that's, you know, very near and dear to my heart, and I'm proud of it.
Wonderful, and I'm sure everyone's going to really enjoy this. We're going to play it right now. If you'd like to follow Cianan Curran, you'll find him on, as he said, YouTube, Facebook and Instagram. And I will be putting his contact details in the description with the podcast. Thank you all for listening. And I would just like to say, you know, take this inspiration, follow those little nudges that you're getting, whoever or wherever they're coming from, and let's keep singing alive. And thanks so much, Cianan, for joining me.
Thank you, much appreciated. She took me to her mummy's house. She led me to her chamber.
Her mammy wasn't best pleased. She said I was a stranger. Now I built her a house out in the woods. Fire I had, it was blazing. The fairies, they came from houses of small, sang for us both in the evening with the row-yo-yo-yo, 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 row-yo-yo-yo. And I loved that girl with all I had. I loved her like it was easy. And I loved that girl with all I had. I loved her like it was easy. With the row-yo-yo-yo, row-yo-yo-yo, with the row-yo-yo-yo, row-yo-yo-yo. I gave that girl all of me gold. I gave her my silver, my bronze. She held it tight in the palms of her hands. She couldn't hold on to it long. With the row-yo-yo-yo,